I'm Sherry Pie. I also go by Sherry, and I've started Sherry's Metaphysical Universe because I've decided to come out of the spiritual closet. I enjoyed Sherry Pie and doing silly skits, but there's something that the universe has called me to do in order to help people who might be having problems in today's society. And because spirituality has become so complex and confusing, I'm going to be doing 101 classes, basically. Each one of my webcasts will be on a certain topic, and I will answer any questions which anyone might have. And that is my goal. Each one of my webcasts will be on something new and something different. Now, the universe called to me, and it basically shouted that it was time for me to step forward into the place where I'm meant to be. I've had psychic abilities and experiences since I was very young, and I will tell you some of the stories because I'm sure you're wondering, who is this person and why would I want to listen to her? But I assure you that the things that have happened to me in the past have taught me my lessons. And I've learned that if you try to arm wrestle God, you will lose. Because of my abilities, I am an empath, first and foremost, and I can feel people's emotions when I'm around them. If they're ill, I feel their illness. If they're sad, I can feel their sadness. And I will help them when I can to give them guidance to make them feel better. So I met many other people. Because of my abilities, you're drawn to other people with psychic abilities, and I've learned from other people. But this started when I was a very small child. I learned that I happen to be what would be considered a light worker, or as Kyle Gray says, who I enjoy very much. I recommend, if you have a calling, to read or get the audiobooks by Kyle Gray. I personally like his audiobooks because he's got a great accent. And he says that we are actually not light workers, we're light warriors. Because not all angels are fluffy. And I'm pretty tough. I can be fluffy at times though. My soul is very old. After speaking with other psychics, I've learned a lot about myself. And I will go more into that later. But what I will tell you about myself, I had a very odd beginning. My mother was a schizophrenic, and my father was a designer. And I would say he was rather obsessive compulsive. He taught us to pay attention to detail and notice things, and I am blessed every day that he gave me that. When I was a child, I often played by myself, but there were entities that would play with me, and that's hard for me to explain, but I believe my guardian angel was one of them who has always been with me, and that is my grandmother, is my guardian angel. And I thank her and I'm grateful to her every day for taking the time to be with me and to guide me through all of the experiences I've had. As a light worker, I have suffered. We all suffer, but the amount of suffering a person might go through can be different between one individual to another. We all suffer. My life was very chaotic, and I did not fit in with people. I was always picked on and then I would go home and I would deal with a schizophrenic mother, which was very complicated. I didn't understand her schizophrenia, and my father didn't either. And I know that that was very difficult for him because she wasn't always schizophrenic. It started much later in her life. As I went through school, I was an awkward child and not very attractive. If I had some pictures, I would show you, and maybe I will at a later date. But yeah, my senior year in high school was when everything changed for me. And I left that awkwardness behind me. But what I took with it was my lesson that regardless of what someone looks like, they have a soul and a heart, and they deserve to be treated with respect and love. I would recommend for anyone who is on a spiritual journey and feels that they have something that they need to learn, that you get a spiral notebook and just take notes of things that make a difference to you. It could be a short prayer. It could be something I say. It could be something someone else says. But the key to all of this is knowledge and learning. And it's so important for us to learn. I was forced into this. I'm thankful. I'm grateful. Because for me to be in service to you and to be able to help any other individuals is the greatest blessing I could receive. When I started in college, I wanted to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I was so confused with all of these abilities that I had and that I could read people and see things that I started drinking, and that was a very big problem for me. But I did find myself studying about mental illness and other psychological factors and attempting to learn about how the brain works. My first husband was a disaster case because I just knew I wasn't going to be with him even when I was with him. The whole reason that I was with my first husband was so I could give birth to my son, who is a warrior in himself. And he is a remarkable person who happens to be in one of our armed forces. So you can sleep a little better at night knowing he's out there looking out for you. My first husband abandoned us, and that was a hard lesson. And I was very fortunate that I had my parents who helped me to raise him to be the person who he is, because he learned more from my father than he could learn from anybody. He's just an amazing child, and he proves that to me all the time. My second husband, I met when I went into the military. I tried going to Florida, moving to Florida, and starting an airbrushing business, and it was so competitive. It was really kind of a foolish thing for me to attempt. But I tried, and I failed, and that was another lesson. But I had to be able to sustain my son and I, and so that's why I joined the Army. I met my second husband. He was a sergeant, and we were together for 7 years. I was stationed in Germany. While in Germany, I started studying various religions to try and understand, because I was raised Catholic, I wanted to understand how other people thought. Why were all these people dying over religion? I couldn't understand it, so I attempted to do what I could, and I read and I studied. And I got involved with Wicca, and I was actually part of a coven for some time. So I have that behind me. And that was the beginning of my metaphysical abilities, that I could cast spells and make things happen through intention. I believe I hurt people, but it wasn't intentional. And I'll explain that to you later, because Our thoughts affect everyone. We're part of this web. And when I touch you, you touch someone else, and we are all connected. And what we do makes a difference through this web. If we are happy, it affects the web. If we're sad, it affects the web. If we're frightened or angry, and these negative emotions can really harm everyone, but mostly ourselves. You might be confused. What is my purpose in this world? What am I supposed to be doing? Well, you're on your path right now. And there are signs that fall at your feet every day explaining what you're supposed to be doing and if you're on the right path. But you might be too caught up in your job or something to notice. Notice the signs. Take the time to look and see what's happening around you. These synchronicities are not accidents. I can tell you that this world, this universe is perfect. And we were gifted as humans with spirits and souls. And we have free will. And that's a blessing and a curse. Because of my Wicca, I actually did a fertility dance around my second husband and got pregnant on that night. And that's how my daughter was brought into this world. And I know that something fantastic is going to happen to her. And I'm looking forward to watching her grow up. My marriage to my second husband only lasted 7 years. And I met my third husband. I'm going to have 5 by the time I'm done. It's already been written. So, look out. I don't know who you are out there, but I will find you. We will find each other. And I learned what I like, what I appreciate, and what I am grateful for in a mate, in someone to be with. And that's very important, that we find the people who make a difference in our lives and enrich us and not bring us down or break us. So that was a lesson. People change. We change every 7 years. Our whole body, all of our chemistry changes every 7 years. So when I do a reading for someone, I look to see where they are in that 7-year period, because when you're first starting the 7 years, it's much better. In the middle, you might be peaking, but toward the end, that's when it gets very complicated and it can be very difficult. Now, you might have heard, I can tell you, life's lessons are often painful. They have to be, because we wouldn't pay attention otherwise. As long as you learn from them. Understand, spirit starts out, it gives you a little nudge to try and get your attention. And if it doesn't get your attention then, you get more than a nudge. You might get a slap. And then if you're still not paying attention, I'll tell you, you're going to get beat with a 2x4. And I know because I've lived it. I can tell you nothing is random. I was talking to a guy when I was at a casino. And I actually it was odd. The bartender, I knew that she had lost people in her lives and she was frustrated by it. And I knew it was a sister and a good friend. And I could tell one died from cancer and the other from a head injury. And so we were discussing how she could remedy these negative feelings she had. And so there was a gentleman, he was listening to me, and he asked me, can you guess how old I am? Because the parlor tricks are pretty lame. That's not what this is about. It's not what being psychic being psychic is about. But I told him, yeah, you're 34. You have 2 children. He's like, yeah. I said, yeah, one is 5, the other's 7. Yes. And I could tell, and I was telling him things, and he was very surprised that I knew. And then I told him that nothing happens by accident. Everything happens for a reason. And he got so angry. And I was actually very surprised by the anger he felt over me just saying that. But obviously there were things that were going on in his life that I didn't know about. And that was something that he would have to work through. Because once you realize that there is synchronicity and that everything does happen for a reason, you have that aha moment. The aha. That's why that happened. The longer we live in our lives, the more we can look back at what has happened and say and understand. That's why that happened the way it did. At the time it's happening, it can be something very intense, and it's pushed on you so hard that it's complicated and you don't understand. And it's not till later you look back and you have the aha, I understand now. I can tell you that I am spiritual. I believe that religions are like God's fingers. To me, all religions are of value. Now, I'm not talking about cults. I'm talking about religions. And later on, I'm going to discuss different religions, their philosophies, and their beliefs, and the reasons why they do the things they do, because I believe it's important for you to understand also. So I'm intending to have these 15 to 20 minute webcasts of different things so that I can explain to you what I have learned, what I have been educated in schools by, and what I have read. Over the last year, I've read over 130 books. I've notated on all of them. I practice every day. I have found my masters, and I understand so much more. And it all started with a Kundalini awakening spontaneously. If you don't know what a Kundalini is, I will tell you, I will be explaining the Kundalini to you in the future. And I want to talk about other things that people don't want to talk about, like death. Our society fears death, and there's no reason for it. It's a transition. It's like walking through a doorway. We go through deaths every day. It could be the death of a job. It could be your car dying. It could be anything, but it's a metamorphosis. It's a change is what it is. You're going from point A to point B, and we all have to do it. It's part of the cycle. We may be sad that we've lost someone we've loved. I've had a lot of loss over the last couple of years, but I do talk to the people that I've lost, and they do respond to me. They do. And it's nice to know that my mother is no longer mentally ill, because since she passed on, she has become herself again. That was a very difficult thing for her to do. And for people to come into the world and for you to be confused as why? Why did this happen the way it did? Why did something happen? There is a reason. And if you have questions, I welcome you to contact me at sherrypie568@gmail.com. I can answer questions for you. I also do readings, and I read tarot. And I would like very much to help you, anyone who's having difficulty transitioning. The next video will be a little more on me. I was going to try and fit in some of the stories of how I found out that I was psychic, but I've already gone to 20 minutes, and I don't really want to go over 20 minutes with one of my videos. So tomorrow I will tell some stories about what has happened to me. And then the day after that, I'm going to discuss this transition, the age of Aquarius, the reason, the Hopi prophecies of the blue and red Kachinas, and why our world is changing. This next year is going to be really something else. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I will be here. I'm here for you. And there's a lot of people like me who are here for you. You are not alone in the world. Never feel like you're alone. They're your guides and your angels. They embrace you and they love you all the time. You're never alone. And I'm going to end this now because I could keep going. But I want to end this. And I'll be back on again tomorrow. But I'm going to say a little prayer. Oh, Great Spirit, thank you for letting me awaken again to this day. Thank you for giving me this day, for walking in the crisp air and mailing a letter. I am grateful for my family. Give much gratitude to all of the spirits who guide me. And thank you for bringing the people who are here watching me today. This is a blessing. And right now, you and I are part of this web. And I wish you all of the blessings you deserve because you are spirit. You are important. You're beautiful. And you will find your path, I promise. So please, I hope to see you again. And I wish you a wonderful evening. Namaste.